We hope, as one of our first acts, to make the transcripts of our witnesses fully available to special counsel for any purpose, including the bringing of perjury charges, if necessary, against any of the witnesses.
I think Roger Stone lied to our committee, and he had to send a number of letters amending his testimony. There are others like him, and I'm only referencing him because his letters to the committee to update his testimony after free press reporting on some things he didn't disclose is out there. I don't want to put any others out there because it's not public yet.
Witnesses in the Russia investigation, you know who you are officially on notice. The new democratically controlled House Intel Committee vowing to scour testimony obtained under Republican control for lies and inconsistencies and turn anything that doesn't add up over to Robert Mueller, which means chances are good that a few of Trump's allies on the long list of those who've testified before Congress, including Donald Trump's son, Don Jr., and several senior White House officials, may soon find themselves under intensifying pressure by Robert Mueller. Joining our conversation, former federal prosecutor, now an MSNBC legal analyst, Glenn Kirshner, Matt, Michael, Karine, and Tim are still here. Glenn, let me start with you. A lot of people suspected that Michael Cohen's final crime that he pleaded guilty to, lying to Congress, might have also been a signal to other people who might have committed the same crime. Is that ever the case?
Yeah, you know, Nicole, when I look back at the sentencing memo that the special counsel's office filed in Michael Cohen's case, there is one pretty powerful and vivid line of foreshadowing in that memo when it says, and they're discussing the fact that Michael Cohen lied to, I believe, both the House and Senate Intel committees about the timing and the nature of the efforts being made by Trump and his organization to build the Trump Tower in Moscow. And there is this line in the sentencing memo. It says that Cohen described to the special counsel the circumstances of preparing and circulating his response to the congressional inquiries. We now know that they were false responses. So once the lie is put to his testimony, it is awfully easy for the House and Senate Intel committees to determine who else lied to them under oath. They simply need to review the transcripts, see who else lied, and I'm betting that Bob Mueller in his office on a secure whiteboard somewhere has the names of the people who he can already prove lied to Congress listed out. And beyond the lie, it also tends to show that there was a conspiracy to lie because Michael Cohen circulated his false answers to others. We don't know who those others are, but Bob Mueller does.
Glenn, anyone else that puts their glasses on to read has a key to my heart, so I'm going to give you one more. I noticed that in Mike Flynn's sentencing memo, where they were actually, at least on the Mueller side, they were arguing for leniency in sentencing for Mike Flynn, but they made a point of really detailing just how insidious and corrosive it is for someone of his stature in the U.S. government to lie. Just talk a little bit about the general mindset among federal prosecutors about lying in the context of an investigation.
Yeah, Nicole, I was actually in the courtroom at what I'll call the attempted sentencing of Michael Flynn, and I saw Judge Emmett Sullivan, who I appeared before when I was a prosecutor here in D.C., just absolutely take him to task. You know, Judge Sullivan, who often lays into prosecutors if we're not doing something quickly enough or efficiently enough, really looked at General Flynn as government misconduct personified, because the National Security Advisor getting caught talking dirty to the Russians on the phone and then lying about it, it really doesn't get more egregious or more damaging to our national security than that. And couple that with the fact that he has now been cooperating over the course of so many meetings with the Mueller team. And even in his sentencing memorandum, it was set out how he had firsthand, long-term access to President Trump and knowledge about the inner workings of the campaign. That spells real trouble for President Trump and his family members and close associates.
Matt Miller, I have long abandoned cause and effect with Donald Trump, but I'm going to give you two pieces of information and ask you to go. So over the weekend in the New York Times, David Leonhardt writes why this campaign finance violation is worse than the others. These payments were not most campaign finance violations. They involved large secret payoffs in the final weeks of a presidential campaign that prosecutors said deceived the voting public. What should happen to a president who won office with help from criminal behavior? The founders specifically considered this possibility, and the most direct answer came from George Mason, a president who practiced corruption and by that means procured his appointment in the first instance should be subject to impeachment. And also then Donald Trump tweeted this: many people currently a part of my opposition, including President Obama and the Dems, have had campaign violations, in some cases for very large sums of money. These are civil cases. They paid a fine and settled. While no big deal, I did not commit a campaign violation. Clearly, it's not just Mueller weighing on the president, it's SDNY.
I think the president's behavior, both in public and in private, have shown for several months now that he knows the SDNY investigation is very much a threat to his presidency and maybe even a threat to his personal freedom once he leaves office. You know, there are these constant, this isn't the first time he's tweeted something like this, where he's tried to downplay the extent of those crimes, comparing them to something President Obama did, which was truly a civil violation. But then there are also his private acts. You know, it was reported just over the holidays that the president actually intervened at the Justice Department and complained to Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general, and asked why more wasn't being done to control the prosecutors at the Southern District of New York. I think that's a pretty obvious act of obstruction of justice. And I think before their investigation is done, we're going to hear more about that intervention at the Justice Department. For him to reach over and intervene at DOJ, you know, 2 years into his presidency, after he ought to know that that's the hot stove. I mean, that kind of intervention is what got Bob Mueller appointed in the first place. For him to do it again tells me that he is very, very worried about that SDNY investigation. And he ought to be. When prosecutors stand up in court and say that you essentially say that you committed a crime, you should expect that there's more action coming. And if I were him, I would be very, very concerned.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.